Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading property experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, and Ben Kingsley, Chair of Property Investment Professionals of Australia and the 2014 and 2015 Property Investment Advisor of the Year.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, like Pinocchio. All right, folks, you are on the Christmas edition of the Property Couch, where each week Ben and I bring you the insider's guide to property investing. But, mate, clearly from that effort, we're a waste of talent.
Well, I don't know why. We aren't on stage. If Rachel Cole's listening, she could probably not have
she'd be embarrassed of us. Rachel would be right now. So, yes, but there's probably a few people out there who could sing better than us, don't you think?
Probably
one or two.
How many billion of people on the planet?
Yeah. Well, speak for yourself, mate. I thought I was belting out pretty well then. I thought you were sort of dragging me down. Very good, folks. I don't know when you're listening to this, but if you're listening to it on the weekend, hopefully people are now into the early stage of their Christmas break.
Jobs finished.
Their holiday season break.
Let's hope they're not trying to shop and can't get a car park and all of that sort of stuff.
How are you going with that?
I don't shop.
Pretty
well.
Really?
Simple.
You don't, mate?
No.
All done?
Yep.
Mate, you've, mate, you're from the old school.
Look, you know.
What about the dearly beloved?
Oh, yeah. We're going away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going in.
But you've got to get her a gift.
Yeah, that's the gift.
She's getting the gift. Did you see Ives' face?
She's getting the gift of love.
She's getting the gift of love after how many years of marriage?
Gift. Too many. No.
Can you remember?
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, mate, lucky she's not listening.
Yeah, about 12 or 13. They've been together, I think, about 8 or 9 years. So, yes, but beautiful Jane. Merry Christmas, darling. Someone
said to me, yes, good save. Someone said to me the other day, does Andrea listening to the podcast? I went, no. No, she does not listen to the podcast.
Jane doesn't listen either, so that's all wasted.
So, let's just set the record straight. Our wives did not listen to us at all.
Maybe if we're trying to get the download numbers up.
Well, approaching a mil.
We are.
Approaching a mil. Santa is delivering us a present, Ives.
Yeah, in 2017 we should be there. Over 900,000 downloads.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Thank you for listening.
That's amazing. So
let's keep the show upbeat as much as we can.
Well, you're going to sing
because I'm going to tee off again in 2017. I can just see it happening. I've got a few little rants that I want to... I want a new segment on the show in 2017, sneak peek.
Yeah.
It's called Call and Bulldust.
Call and Bulldust.
So whenever we've got some problems with APRA, ASIC, regulators...
You'll be fired up every week.
Oh, I know. But I'm gonna every now and then I'm gonna call bulldust on something.
No, we just have to make sure you keep your teeth in, your false teeth on that one. So.
Bulldust on spruikers, bulldust on people who do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Bulldust on bad money managers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, you're on fire.
I'm ready to go. Anyway,
all right.
What do we got today?
Mate, let's round out this festive season. I know we've got one more. I think we've got Peru for next our final episode.
Pre-New Year's Eve.
Peru Mew ahead. That's something to look forward to. But we're going to do some Q&A. But I've found some queries that I think will maybe summarise some of the learnings throughout the year and crystallise some of that. So let's kick it off. Now I've got a long one here. Chris, hi there. Was hoping you could unpack the reality of the following finance-related scenario for me. I understand there is an accumulation phase where the investor actively accumulates as many quality, appreciating assets as required, wanted, before transitioning to a debt reduction or debt retirement phase in the property investing journey. I was hoping you could spend some time describing what this debt retirement phase actually looks like, assuming the investor has between 3 to 5 investment properties, all on interest-only terms.
Yes.
Changing all these to principal and interest at the same time would probably be too strenuous on the budget.
Correct.
So is it a case of paying off the largest investment loan on principal and interest terms while refinancing the remaining loans as interest only for another 3 to 5 years and start knocking off the balance of the largest loan? Or is it a case of building up the offset account on each loan evenly so that you end up paying less interest across all of the loans until you're in a position to pay the loan back in full? But in this scenario, the banks will eventually put you on a principal and interest payment unless you refinance again to an interest-only loan. So how do you juggle at least 5 investment loans potentially all coming off their interest-only terms within 12 to 18 months of each other while you're trying to retire the debt without blowing the family budget? Big question mark. Is it a case of focusing on one property at a time until the rent covers the P&I payments before moving on to the next property? Or is it a case of continually refinancing to interest-only loans and building up the offset accounts? Is it better to focus on the largest loan first or distribute funds evenly across all loans? And then there's another paragraph, but I think we get the point. So, Ben.
Start from the top.
Start from the top.
Okay, so very, very macro, how we play this is, doesn't matter how many properties there are, it's all about the global value. So you're absolutely right, Chris, in terms of building up a portfolio. We're interested in the value of the assets. And, you know, we've talked about, we don't care if you've got 18, 22, 5 great ones. The total value is the important point. So that's what we're trying to build up to. Now, obviously, we've got a global value and then we'll have a global debt. Now, we all know that we like to uncross-securitise our loans, so we're going to have different loan splits across all of those properties. So the way in which we try and approach it is, as we've always talked about, is we want to be in control by going interest only. Now, there's a few things happening in the world. We saw CBA this week come out with a higher premium for interest-only loans. Now, that is being absolutely led behind closed doors by APRA. Okay, and unfortunately, property investors are being picked on at the moment by the lenders because we've got too many people trying to invest in property, and APRA's concerned about a property bubble, and so is the RBA. So APRA's doing the RBA's dirty work. Okay, right. So coming back to that point, so right now some of our bigger lenders are potentially under a lot of pressure to try and get people on principal interest loans because APRA and the government, on the whole, don't think people can pay off debt, which is really sad because even though there's only a small few people who maybe, you know, got themselves into too high a gearing and have speculated too hard on property, are the ones that are going to ruin it for the rest of us, which is a classic case of 5% doing the wrong thing and the government regulate for the other 95%. I thought I said I was going to leave my rants and
the retaliating
until
punch.
2017. Anyway, back to the point. So the reality is that, you know, the world is going to change over 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and there will be new people who lend money. So peer-to-peer lending in residential property space will become bigger and bigger. Watch this space. That's my prediction. So when the banks start to penalise investors, we will seek alternative funds to actually look after those investment properties. But let's say hypothetically that we do have the ability to do the interest-only terms, which we still would be able to. So in other words, if I'm buying a property now, another property in 18 months, another property in 18 months, some I'll do on 5-year interest only, some I'll do longer, some I may even do shorter. Now, the trick here is rather than paying them all on balance, you actually pay the highest, most expensive debt first. All right, so you should be able to work out in your portfolio because usually when you get to 4 and 5 properties, you're going to spread that over a couple of lenders. So you're not necessarily going to have all of your lending with one institution. And again, we will see what the big institutions do. So it may be the next 5 or 10 years may be the time of the second tier institutions, lenders, I should say. And that could be the opportunity where they don't have a difference between investment lending and also owner-occupied lending. So this is again why getting access to an investment savvy mortgage broker is really important, to be able to sort of do that. So I'll answer that by, again, summarising. Pay off the highest debt first, and it's always the owner-occupied debt. You've got to get the owner-occupied debt down first, and then you focused on the highest investment debt second, and you look at your global portfolio. Is that good enough?
Oh, mate, great answer. Really great answer. Because it's really the core fundamentals of money smarts. Looking for expensive debt, paying that down, getting flexibility, and we've said it a few times. It's like filling up buckets. If you can, let's just say one bucket's got $100 worth of debt. You're trying to put next to it a bucket of $100 to fully offset it, and so you're running around collecting buckets of cash against your loans, and so you are then in a position of strength because you're controlling your cash flow. So the latter part of the question, Ben, is around about then you can pay off the loan. Not necessarily. You can still just control that cash and roll with the punches at the time with what the finance environment or what the lending environment suggests. But if you've got call it $1 million in debt and $1 million in cash.
Yeah.
You've effectively paid off the loan, even though it still exists within the institution, but the flexibility remains paramount.
Yeah, it does. So we'll always say advocate for that. Now let's think of worst case scenario. So let's say that the banks still continue to tighten serviceability. So what we could borrow today is not what we can borrow tomorrow. And that is a real risk. So we don't want to wash over the fact that, let's say hypothetically, 5 of your loans come out of interest-only periods, and because they've changed the lending criteria, you're now in a pickle whereby you've got all of this additional principal repayment that you need to make. So there is a risk of that happening. Now, so what is your fallback strategy? Now, your worst case fallback strategy is, let's say you can't get funding, and all of a sudden now you've got to look at your other levers. So remember, we talk about 4 principal levers: income, expenditure, time, and target. Okay, so time meaning how long have we got to continue on the accumulation phase, and then the target is obviously what type of income we're trying to achieve, and that's how we reverse engineer back. So the first thing I would always say to people is, have you got the ability to tighten the budget? Okay, so tighten the family budget for a period of time, or absolute worst case scenario, you would sell one of those properties. Now, ideally, we've got to make sure that, I always say to people, you want to hold your properties for a minimum of 5 years. If you don't hold your property for a minimum of 5 years, there is potential that once you calculate the gain that it's had and the interest that you've actually paid, plus the stamp duty and that combination, you may not actually be in front. Your property starts to be quite highly profitable after 10 years. So you've got to, and that's why I always say, and when I'm building plans for clients, and our team's building plans for clients, is that if we can't hold it for a minimum of 10 years, it doesn't go on the books. In other words, we'd prefer not to buy that property and focus on paying debt down than actually buying that property. And that could then mean that person goes and invests in other businesses through the share market or something along those lines.
Yeah, very good. So hopefully that helped you there, Chris. But that's a question that a lot of people have. How does the mechanics of it work? Because most of the time, for our podcast, really, it's about accumulation, buy more, and just this never-ending, sense of he who dies with the most toys wins.
Yes.
But for us to suggest a slightly different approach, which is to retire the debt, it's important that people understand what that mechanics is.
Yeah, and it all still comes back to cash flow management and making sure that you're doing a great job in that. You don't want to stretch yourself too hard where the risk could be on the downside, where you have to sell a property too early. Okay, next one here. I've got one from Bill. Hi, Ben and Bryce. Love the podcast. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. My question is, I have paid off my principal place of residence. Home loan account closed. Nice. So you've got that little title in your hand. You're holding on to that title. Good on you. Now, we would like to upgrade our principal place of residence. Which advice suggestions do you have regarding using your ex-principal place of residence as an investment, or do you sell it off and then use the proceeds of selling that off to pay down your new principal place of residence debt, and then go off and buy an investment property?
Yeah, no, that's a question that comes up a lot,
yes,
Bill, and it's one of those ones that you don't really realise there's a challenge until you get to the point where you're at, because one of the reasons that we suggest that clients consider getting interest only on their principal place of residence, which goes against years and generations of conditioning, is when they're in the situation that you find yourself in, Bill, they've got flexibility. So if, for example, you had your own home at interest only, still had a lot of debt on it, you had the equivalent amount of money in an offset account, meaning you've technically paid it off, but still the debt exists. If you were to move the money out of that offset account, you would not change the nature of the loan, which is the key point here. And you could then put that offset money against the new property that you purchase. Whereas in your scenario, the tax department, or your accountant, anyone who audits it, is going to say, what was the purpose of the loan? So if you leverage against your fully paid off home to buy your next principal place of residence, irrespective of the fact that the security is an investment property, still means that the new loan is not tax deductible. So whilst not giving you advice, unfortunately what happens here is to not be in a scenario where you have large amount of non-tax deductible debt on your new principal place of residence. You generally are looking to sell it, Ben, because it's capital gains tax exempt on your principal place of residence. But you would then want to set up the loan you want to set up your finance on the next one so that you don't end up in that position again. And that's I reckon that question comes up so often, and
It does.
when you're buying your principal place of residence, you aren't thinking 10, 15, 20 years down to where Bill is right now, but it's not until you get there. So it's having that the foresight and being able to plan for that. It's not until you get a question like this that people can think about it.
Correct. And so we don't give tax advice, but I'll expand on what Bill's saying, because there's a couple of alternative scenarios here. So let's say, Bill, we don't know whether you've got a partner, because it says I've paid off, so rather than we've paid off. So assuming you had a partner, and let's say she's on a lower income, now you might be able to transfer that property through a gift of love into her name, which doesn't then attract stamp duty in some states. Okay, in some states there might be a stamp duty amount. So let's say, Bill and Mary. So let's say Mary's stay-at-home mum doing all of the home economics and looking after that. Now imagine if we then put that property into her name, and she would then enjoy the rental income as income for herself, and the first roughly $19,000 that she would be earning would be tax-free, because that's how our tax scales work in Australia. So again, it's a bit of horses for courses. So there might be a period also there where they might be wanting to start a family, and the wife or the husband may be taking some time off to raise that child, so maternity leave or paternity leave, and there could also be an advantage for that year to actually hold on to that property and leverage that, and then maybe sell it in a couple of years' time, in the event that it's grown in value. Like if it's a moving market, then it's probably, you want to try and time it. Whereas if the property's been stagnant for a couple of years and it's about to move, we would say, well, don't rush into selling it if you can hold on to both. So what does it come back down? The fundamentals, it's all about the numbers and all about your personal circumstances. So go out and get some professional advice based on the scenarios that you need to look at, because we do run the models and we can show you what it means financially. We can show you what the best outcome would be in a dollar sense based on the assumptions that we use, and then you can make a more informed decision. In some cases, the result could be it is best to sell that property. In other cases, it could be very much best to keep that property. And because ultimately, at the very end of the day, we want to be in a position where all your properties are delivering you cash flow. The rent is actually your passive income in retirement. So ideally, I'm not a big fan of selling properties, but it'll all come down to personal circumstances. So if you're able to offset some of that income, you may not also be a high income earner. And that could also mean that, that's actually really good. You may be later in your life where you want to transition to 3 or 4 days a week. Well, that's also then going to mean that this income is going to be an important part of that. So again, it's going to be a case by case. There is no cut and dry solution to this, because there are a couple of opportunities for every household in this space.
What? There's no one size fits all?
No one size fits all, Bryce. No one size
serious?
fits all, mate.
Very good question, Bill. Thank you. We've got an anonymous question from Facebook.
Anonymous. How do you get anonymous on Facebook?
Yeah.
They don't want their name read out. So this one's from Bill Clinton.
No, this is one of Ivis's admirers, I think. Just doesn't want to leave his name. G'day. I have a question that I think a lot of listeners would relate to, and something you guys have not covered thus far.
Ooh,
imagine that.
I think there's plenty of things we haven't covered.
Mate, that opens up a can of worms. Firstly, about me, I'm 32 and have recently developed a passion to enhance my knowledge of residential property investment. I am in the army and have a young family on my income alone. I earn $106,000 per annum gross. I bought my first principal place of residence in 2012 in Sydney, which is valued at $840 currently.
Good on you.
Since I started my learning using you guys as my guides, I've done the following. Analysed our cash flows for a month to understand where our money is going. Tick.
Not bad.
Gotten rid of all non-deductible debt, i.e. credit cards, personal loans. Beautiful. Bought our first investment, a 2-bedroom apartment near Penrith.
Oh, okay. Penrith is a little hub that's growing.
Kingswood's appropriate near Penrith, isn't it?
Near the...
No, I'm thinking of Bathurst, actually.
Yeah,
Forget that. Kingswood. You know the old Kingswood?
Yeah.
Just indulge me, mate. Just
That's
nod.
all right.
Just
I was
nod.
going to say next to the Commodore and the Chimera.
Yeah.
And the Astra.
It's walking distance to the station and 5 minutes to the train station, Nepean Hospital and UWS.
Good.
I also rolled our car loans into the investment.
Into the investment.
Interesting.
That flag's an interesting...
The place is currently leased at a 4.2% yield. We manage our money to allocate spending for myself and my wife, similar to your model you advise with regards to offset and spending accounts. I also have a broker, an accountant, and I also use a buyer's agent. All very good.
Gee.
So my question, I recently sought advice from a financial planner.
Ooh.
After an interview, he sent me a proposal and plan, which also outlines his fees. His fees were $500 a month, with monthly payments that would be ongoing for a period of a few years.
Mm-hmm.
If cash flow management is essential and using surplus cash flows to reinvest is a key step, then how is $500 a month going to enable this? Isn't it counter to one of your pillars of mastery? If I had a large income and a large portfolio, then this would be manageable, but I don't. Are all financial planners this expensive? I can see the value of buyer's agents' fees, but I can't see the value in planners for myself. Your thoughts on this would be greatly appreciated. I love your work on the podcast.
Okay.
That's anonymous.
Anonymous. I was going to say, g'day,
Yeah, what's
Anonymous. G'day. Couple of points there. Firstly, we're going to give the listeners the value formula. Now, the value formula is value equals benefit over cost. Okay? So I'll put it in the sporting context because we love talking about sport.
No Collingwood stories, come on.
There won't be Collingwood yet. We'll be talking more about Collingwood into the new year. Okay. This one, let's call it tennis. Okay? So we've gone to the tennis analogy before. But if I employ a coach, okay, I'm not paying that coach technically an annual fee. I might be paying them a weekly fee. They're on a wage. Okay. Now that coach's job is to provide benefit for me to be the best player I can be, to aspire to either be number one or to obviously make a living out of my tennis profession, as an example. So the benefit needs to be greater than the cost. Now, if the coach is going to cost me $1 million a year and I'm going to earn $1.2 million for the effort and the training that's done, you might then sort of say there might be a coach that could be not as good, but will give me that potential benefit for, say, $600,000 a year and I take the $800,000.
Yep.
Right? But if I'm the number one tennis player in the world and I want Boris Becker to be my coach or Ivan Lendl to be my coach, they may cost me $1 million or $2 million. But if I'm earning $12 million a year, then the relative is all good. So, coming back to your question, Anonymous, the benefit must, and I think you've answered your own question by saying, I can't see the benefit. Now, so that's true because you can't see the benefit over cost. You could see the value that the buyer's agent brought to the table. You can see the value that the investment savvy mortgage broker brought to the table. But in terms of what they're potentially doing, if in the proposal that they've given you, if they haven't been able to outline the value, then maybe you need to look elsewhere or you need to have that conversation to yourself. Could I find the same solution for $1,000 a year as opposed to potentially $6,000 if I can't see that value?
Yes, good points. I mean, strategy, who's driving the strategy here, Anonymous?
Yeah,
because
great point.
I'm often asked the question, Bryce, why would I get a plan if you're at, they say it, very respectful, but if you can do what you say you can do, Bryce, and you can get me the best investment property, why would I get a plan? And it's like, well, yeah, good point. So the analogy that I use is if I was an award-winning builder of a home, right? And you come to me and you say, Bryce, I want you to build me a great home. Can you do it? And I say, yeah, the workmanship will be amazing. The craftsmanship will be just second to none. You will have a beautiful home. So what I'll do is I say, where's your block of land? And then I'll go to my suppliers, I'll get the timber, I'll get the cement, I'll get all the fixtures and fittings, and I'll build you a home. And afterwards, you will walk through that home and you'll go, wow, it's faultless, the paintwork is amazing, the detail you've gone to. But we've got a north-facing backyard and you have not taken advantage of that. And you've put a balcony at the front of the house and I've got city views at the back of the house. Why would you put it at the front of the house? So despite walking through this house and I've built it to perfection, I haven't taken advantage of what's on offer. So if I had gone to an architect and a project manager before I started building and said, this is what's available, what's the best strategy for me to build this house, we'd have a totally different result because that architect would go, all right, we've got to take advantage of that orientation. You've got teenagers in your house, we've got to give you separate living rooms. We've got to make sure that, you've got all this beautiful greenery on the left side of the block and, a building on the other side. So the plans would take into account the bigger picture strategy we're going to do. So therefore, I overlay the plan of what I've got with the craftsmanship and the outcome is just far superior.
Correct. Because
and ultimately that's what, in terms of Ben's equation, that's what we're trying to work out here. What's the benefit? The benefit is enormous to get the architect and the project manager involved in that, but it's going to cost me money.
Yeah.
So it comes down to what value do I place on that?
I'll maximise the value of your land, your aspect, and what you're looking for by talking to you. So I'll show you the benefits, and they should outweigh the cost. And then we all see the value. And then in the implementation, you're delivering that implementation to bring the craftsmanship and the quality that they're also looking for. So you bring value to the table as well. So benefit is there. So that's just a great way to look at things when you're understanding, and not just anything. It could be buying a boat, buying a car. There might be other things like safety and reliability that also come into that. But the reality is you will make this equation around, okay, what benefit do I see over what cost? So what value does it bring me? And that's when you'll make your buying decision, whether it be strategic, which is what we think investing for the future and building wealth is all about, or just a needs base, which is, well, I need to get from A to B to go to work to earn the income that I earn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
And the biggest cost that most investors face is procrastination, Ben.
Oh, yep.
So if that particular advisor at $500 a month, can deliver value, but also can make sure that they start instead of having this chat 3 or 4 years down the track.
Yeah.
That's enormous value, but it's hard to see
Yeah.
when we're focused on price. It's hard to see value, but so we obviously can't comment on the financial planner, but other than to say that it makes sense to pay for people to drive the strategy as well as the tactics.
We absolutely love the question, Anonymous. Thanks very much. And one final quick little tip. I just did write one note. You did 1 month of budget, or tracking of what you spend. I would say 3 months. Should be a minimum. 6 months ideal, because let's face it, not all of our bills roll out on a 1 month basis. So if you can actually get a good sense of what your averaged monthly bills will be, so if you can roll them out over 12 months and divide them by that, that's when you're going to get a more reliable cash flow if you're trying to do it yourself.
Christmas gifts all around, mate.
I just love passing on the knowledge, mate.
We've got some gifts to give away at the end of the podcast.
Very good, liking that. Okay, g'day guys. How are we going for time? Good. Hi guys.
That's the first time
I've got a question for the
97
podcast.
episodes. Ben's checked the time.
Well, I just like to rabbit on, mate. Here we go. Continuing on. Andrew here. I'm 26. My wife is 25. In brackets, dinks. Double income, no kids. Okay, we live in Brisbane. Now, combined income is $150,000. We've almost finished paying off our wedding. Ouch, in brackets. Yep, we've all been there. But we're now planning for the future, and we want to get ahead before kids come along. These music to my heart. I mean, can you hear my heart beating? That's awesome. I love that. People trying to plan for the future. We don't own a home, currently renting. However, we're strong savers, and we'd be in a position to buy a property in approximately 12 months. Good savings mentality there. The issue is, our plan is to move to Adelaide in 2018 to allow my wife to study dental hygiene, limited college options in Queensland. Would it be best to buy a house or investment property right before we move to South Australia, drop a single income to $100,000 because the wife's going off to study, or wait until she graduates 2-year degree and look to invest then? Neither of us would sit still for 2 years. So these you guys are doers. I love doers. We're reluctant to buy right before dropping to a single income.
We're reluctant to buy before the single income?
Yeah, but we're reluctant. So neither of us want to sit still for 2 years, but we're reluctant to buy right before dropping to a single income.
It sounds like a classic opportunity for rent vesting, because if they're from Queensland, once Andrew's wife gets qualified, chances are, and if they're going to have children, they'll want to get return to base.
Yep.
So we don't really want to transact in, transact out. So it might make sense to think about what sort of property they would like to live in when they return from the study, because then you can just put a tenant in it now. And they've said they're reluctant to buy before dropping to a single income, but that's, if you've got the tenant and the taxman paying most, if not all of your bills, and then you have to contribute into a place that's got a bigger picture goal of where you want to be, to me that seems like an opportunity to hedge against growing prices when they get back. Also to take advantage of some of the tax that they're paying now, but also being conscious of the fact that that single income is very real to them. I think it'd be worse to come back in 4 years and have to pay a price that's gone up in 4 years' time. So for me, that's a classic sort of rent vesting option there, where they can lock it in now and then just go and get a lifestyle spot in Adelaide whilst they're studying.
Because both areas when we look at Brisbane and Adelaide, we actually don't mind both areas because from an affordability, they're affordability plays, and we think the market's certainly still got more to run in both cities. So, whether you rent, invest and buy in Adelaide or invest and buy in Brisbane, you've got a couple of options open to you. One thing I would be saying to both of you is really strong surplus household income and really strong ability to save quickly. It's that saving piece that's costing you time. So one of the options may be, and we're being, it all comes down to personal circumstances, and but your parents might have equity in their current homes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this could be a situation where you can learn more about parental guarantees. So one of the parents might have an investment property that's unencumbered. Okay, so let's say that property could then form part of the deposit. So you pay the entire loan off. So the parents can't pay the loan off, but you can potentially get the entire loan. Now, the parents' property would take a 25% guarantee against that. So that would cover, so you would borrow effectively 105 to 106% of the value. And we'd make sure that your servicing capability, so this is all going to come down to cash flow, would be able to smash that mortgage. So reinvesting, we've got the rent plus also the income that they're building. Now we'd put that in the offset account. So we would want to try and build up a buffer, and this is where the cash flow models on a month-to-month basis become critical to see whether this is possible. So we go off and we borrow that money, we get the property rented, and then we start building up this war chest. Now we don't have to wait in that case because we're both on good incomes. So it's all of a sudden you're in the market in the next 6 to 12 weeks, depending on how active you want to be. And then we build up a chest of say $20 or $30, $40, $50,000. And so when we go down to that one income, we're away, and we don't have to wait that 2 years. So this is all about timing and all about making sure that. So one of the things we could potentially do, another little gift for the show bag, our little Christmas gift, is we will find a little fact sheet on guarantees. So lending guarantees, just a nice little 2-page. I know one of the lenders has got something there.
Yeah.
So I don't want to plug the lender now, but if you go onto the website, you'll see it's their piece. We're not going to retype it. We're not going to plagiarise it. And that'll just give you an idea of basically some of the facts around getting those guarantees, because the parents are carrying risk and they've got to go and get independent advice around that as well. So it's just important to understand the risk rewards in that case.
You did the talk at the Homebuyer Show a couple of years ago with a PowerPoint presentation on how to get the parents to help you. So
yep.
There we go.
Will I be able to get that?
Well, let's go. I was thinking of you because that's going to be easier to get up than.
It's 2 seconds to download the fact sheet. So, but anyway,
there'll be something there. There'll be something in the Christmas goodies bag there. Iris will put something up there.
If we get a lot of interest in that download, then we'll do a segment on it. Yeah, sounds good.
We'll do a segment on it
next year.
So I think the important point about that question too is people write into us. I remember writing when the show was on. I have to answer the questions on the Lifestyle channel, and they'd come in. They go, "I'm thinking of buying in X suburb. What do you think?" It's like, oh my goodness, that is. So I think the important point here is, you have to understand what's going on in the bigger picture, because we're making assumptions they want to return to base. We're making assumptions they've got surplus. We've got no idea if they've got any cash flow here, but the principles are here are essentially of planning. So. Good question, Andrew. I reckon we can. How much more? One more?
Okay, one more.
It's from Julia. I've only recently discovered your podcast and it's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. I know your advice is location first. I'm torn between two properties. A rundown 1970s one-bedroom unit in Neutral Bay, ground floor, versus a 10-year-old amazing one-bedroom unit in Marrickville, top floor. Both similar price, with similar strata. Neutral Bay property needs everything renovated but has structural limitations. Marrickville unit has an amazing balcony that has a green leafy view and makes you feel like you're at a holiday resort.
Wow.
Go Marrickville. With they'll see Jeff Fennick there, won't they?
Yep, they will.
Marrickville. I know Neutral Bay is blue chip suburb, but would you consider Marrickville as a suburb with a potential high growth over the next 5 years? This is my first property and I'm planning to live there for the next 2 years, then potentially rent it out. Any advice?
Well, so the first thing I would always look at, are we comparing apples with apples? So are we sort of saying that the Neutral Bay property is say 600,000, and the Marrickville property is 600,000.
Yeah.
Because I suspect,
I suspect there's a bit of a
there's going to
difference.
be a bit of a difference. I think
Yep.
the Neutral Bay property is going to be a little bit more expensive.
Yep.
The other thing you can do with some good research is you can discover the sales history of some of the other properties in the block. So you can actually then start to look at how they've performed and how the block's performed overall, and then how the block in both areas is going. Because, just on that brief description, we would want to do a little bit more research to try and determine, and you can also look at its long-term performance in terms of what you think it's going to sell for, and potentially reverse test that. So, with such a limited amount of information, we probably can't make a call. If I was to make a call on the two suburbs, generally speaking, I'd go Neutral Bay every day of the week. That's me. But, if the price point is a factor here, then there might be some more upside as Marrickville becomes more of a blue chip location over time, because it's still not blue chip yet. Whereas Neutral Bay, that's blue chip.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. Pound for pound, you choose Neutral Bay. But for those people that don't live in Sydney, Marrickville's an inner western suburb.
Yes.
That's going for a lot of gentrification, and
Yes.
a lot of people want to live there. A couple of things here. The Marrickville unit is 10 years old, so you get depreciation on the building, whereas the Neutral Bay property is 1970, so you typically wouldn't get depreciation on the building. But it all comes down to human interest, human behaviour, the status test. The status test is by far superior in Neutral Bay to Marrickville. Not to discredit Marrickville, but it's just a fact. It's that lower North Shore precinct of Sydney.
Owner-occupier appeal.
Owner-occupier appeal. There's scarcity. It's locked, by the harbour, and all these beautiful homes in there. So pound for pound. But I suspect the other thing that I was going to notice here is if you're getting a one-bedroom unit. For me, take away the suburbs, we'll just talk about the actual bricks and mortar.
Yep.
The one in Neutral Bay is ground floor versus the top floor. And when you're in a one-bedroom apartment, the ability to still be able to step outside and connect is a premium.
Yep.
So if that one's got...
So long as security's all good and there's no people that can pry
no one's
in,
walking past, all that
yep.
sort of stuff. But
Yep.
all things being equal, if
Yeah,
someone
I agree.
can step out to a courtyard,
100%.
they will pay a premium on that, as opposed to a balcony that's got this green leafy outlook as well. So, Julie, I think it's a really good question. We actually like as a business, and what we help with clients, we actually like those inner gentrifying areas. We're looking in gentrifying spaces in Melbourne, gentrifying in Sydney, gentrifying in Adelaide. Those inner western suburbs we really do like. So Marrickville in general is a good suburb. You want to be looking at the demographics, who's living there, what they do for a living. But if you think about Neutral Bay, you've got your Uber white collars in Neutral Bay.
Yeah,
So
a lot of wealth in the area, a lot of high income, disposable income, and growing. So one other thing we haven't also mentioned, which is absolutely fundamental in your analysis, costs. So body corporates, any sort of other costs associated with that as well.
They've said similar strata, but what I was
Yeah.
going to say is one of the tests I often do when I'm side by siding a property that I need to, where they stack up quite nicely, is I do what's the rental yield after body corporate.
Yeah.
Because
The net rent.
The net rent, yeah. Just that little tweak, because, gross yield, we're getting 4.5%. Great. But after we take into account the body corporate, what's it? Because at the end of the day, I'm of the view that all the amenities investors don't give a rip about them. So therefore, it's all about the numbers, and that's a good little tip for you to stack them up after the body corporate. What's the yield?
And just, sinking fund is also. So each building usually, as part of their body corporate management, will have funds that they set aside for major maintenance. So, replacing the roof, in some cases replacing lifts, which are very expensive. So if both buildings, are all on par on strata, and you also needed to make a deciding factor, if one of them has $150,000 in their sinking fund and the other only has $10,000 in their sinking fund, and you look at the building and it's a little tired, or it needs some work done, or it needs to be painted on the exterior, well, they're going to ask for a special levy, aren't they, on that? So all of a sudden, some of your rent is going to go into paying more cost to maintain the asset. So again, these are some of the little things that you need to review to make sure before you make a
sinking
decision.
fund's a really good point, Ben, because it's a bit like governments trying to plan further out than 4 years because they know that they're 10 years short term. It's a bit like that with sinking funds, because the current owner is paying for it. They get a tax deduction for it, but if they choose to sell, they can't take the cash. It's value that stays in the building.
Yep.
And as you say, you said 150 and 10. Quite often, it's usually does it have any versus does it have 20 grand.
Yeah.
But so there's a few things for you to think about there, Julia. But pound for pound, Ben and I are unanimous. We both go for Neutral Bay.
Beautiful.
There we
All
go.
right, that's it. We're done for Q&A for 2016.
I know. We can hear Santa in the distance. You are an emotional guy. Hey, a couple of quick ones, Ben. We've had some people send us their scenarios before BC.
Before
and
podcast.
AC, before couch and after couch,
Beautiful.
which has been great. But what we want to do is maybe invite those people to reach out to us and send us the link to the property that they were going to buy, and the link to the property that they did buy, because we're going to do a webinar.
Oh, cool!
So next year, so people can actually see it, and we can show it live, and you and I will give some commentary around that. So that's pretty cool.
Great.
And we've also got a new website, Ivis. You've been busy.
Oh, got a new
What have you
website.
been doing? Got a new website. The Property Couch has a new website. Go and check it out. I've mentioned before, Greg Merrilees, he's designed it for us. He's done a few for us. It's terrific. The guy knows what he's doing. So, thepropertycouch.com.au. Tell us what you think.
Thanks, Greg.
And if you haven't got the Money Smart system, Ivis, go to the homepage. It's as simple as to get the Money Smart system. That's a good gift for you to think about over your New Year's resolution period, Ben, for those people who haven't implemented that. So
correct.
That'd be good. We've also got some other gifts to give away.
Oh, what are they? Okay, we've got the case study. I've done a case study, finally. Promised it a long time ago. Found the time because I just kept hitting me over the head with a stick. So I've recorded a case study for a single 30-something female.
Yep.
So that's, there's a lot out there in terms of single people, so it
when
applies
we get the blokes ringing in saying,
it applies to a guy and a girl. I'm trying to think. Was it Rachel or Sophie? I can't remember. It was one of those names, so I just made it up. But
should have said Alex.
Alex.
Unisex.
Oh, yeah, I like that. That's good call. So yeah, Alex, although it's probably not Alex, but. Doesn't matter who the name is, it's all about the numbers. But yes, we've been able to do that as well. And I was rabbiting on about giving you guys access to a graph on population projections. So one of the underlying demand cases won't necessarily grow value in all areas. So don't be suckered in for the whole idea about population as a guarantee for future growth of values. But it is important to know that Australia is growing, and we need to grow because of an ageing population. So we need a new workforce to come in. So we're bringing in skilled migrants who earn good incomes and attract good business and give us better productivity and greater GDP. So there's also a graph there from the ABS in regards to our population forecast moving forward. Over to you, Mr. Bryce.
So thepropertycouch.com.au/Christmas pack.
Christmas pack, and we've also got the guarantee, the little fact sheet on the lending guarantee in there as well. So thank very much. That's good. Ivis's heart is stopped, and I just need to basically. It's all right. I was there. Yeah, there you go. You're all right now.
And of course, a very special thanks to each and every one of our listeners, Ben.
Oh, yeah,
it's been a terrific year.
So I'm going to read out all of their names. There's Bob, Harry, Mary, John.
Well, mate, can you just sign off in every language you did for the last 50 episodes this year?
Yeah, good idea.
But, we hope that every single one of our listeners has a great holiday period. If you're celebrating Christmas, you have a great Christmas period, that you just got some time to switch off and hopefully listen to some of the podcasts that you might not have heard. There's some, apart from ours, there's some terrific ones out there, and I recommend anyone who wants some headspace stuff to go and listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast and Tony Robbins' podcast. That are absolutely terrific. And of course, for those people who, thoughts for those people who can't actually have a great Christmas time now, Ben. There's, we all celebrate and we enjoy it with our families, but there's a lot of people out there who aren't. So our thoughts and prayers go out to those people as well. So
just keep it real. First world problems are car parks at shopping centres. We don't want road rage. We don't need any of that type of stuff. Keep it real.
Yeah.
Right? Just
you call them bull dust?
Call them bull dust on people who have car park rage. Just crazy stuff,
Very good. All right, mate. So the last one before Christmas, we do have a very special episode for New Year next week. We've got Prue on as a guest, which
fantastic.
is great.
Very good. So isn't all language origins Latin? So I'm going to do Latin. German. You actually just heard Ivis's voice for the very first time. That she's going to try and censor it out, but we're going to keep it in. Anyway,
actually, let us know if you want Ivis to open the podcast on the 100th episode.
What a great idea!
So we need to know.
That's a lock
on Facebook.
That is a lock.
Ivis is saying no, folks, but we want to know if you want to hear from Ivis
on
the 100th episode to open the batting.
Because we've got a logo for Ivis. Do we want to share that as well on the website?
We'll put the stick
The
up.
stig up. There we go.
So let us know, folks, on Facebook, if you want to either say yes or no. That's all we need to know. She's giving me the daggers, but it's worth it, folks. And so now just jump on board.
Now, I don't know Latin, and there's 4 options here, but I'm going to go valete.
What?
Valete.
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 There you go, folks. We hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a very safe holiday season. And
Yes.
if you're contemplating property, ponder this, Ben. Santa has only got one property in a poor location, and he has to work year after year after year. So if he had developed a passive income through property and invested outside of his own backyard, had been boardless, he might not need to be delivering the presents right now. So
I think he does it for love.
So the message here is don't be like Santa, folks. Don't buy a property in a poor location. Make sure you get more than one. So, but until next week with Prue, we hope you have a very Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Valete.